Ron Flowers was imprisoned for the murder of Deirdre Washington. She was a 20-year-old girl out on a first date with her boyfriend. Unbeknownst to her, he was a drug dealer. When the boyfriend ran from Ron, a chase ensued and Ron shot at the car as it drove away, killing Deirdre. He was convicted of the murder. After 13 years in prison, Ron volunteered to join the Christian Unit.
Ron came to my office and we wrote a letter together to his victim's mother, Mrs. Washington.
I don't know if I would just find it in my heart to forgive a person for killing my child. You know, a child is the most precious thing in the world, especially your own.
Unbeknownst to us at that time, Mrs. Washington, who was a founder of her church, her pastor was working at the prison as a mentor. And she was wondering where Ron Flowers was, this person who she had grown to hate for 14 years, who had protested his parole vehemently for 14 years, whose whole family hated this person. She wrote a letter back that I asked Ron if he would be willing to meet with her, and he said he would.
And we sat there and we talked, and I wept for a while, and she started, and we just went backwards and forwards, and so.
She said, "What happened?" And he just began to weep. "I didn't mean to kill her. I didn't mean to kill her."
I wasn't really expecting her to come in with open arms, but she came in with open arms. She held my hand and she told me, she said, "I want you to be my son," and it just really tore me apart when she said, "I want you to get out and be my son."
Upon release from prison, Ron would visit Mrs. Washington, and eventually he became family to her.
If he stays clear and free and raises his family, if he does the thing right, then I will feel that my daughter's death was not in vain.
She gave me a love that a friend couldn't have gave me. She gave me a motherly type love.
And Ron later, as he left prison and began to visit and help and work with Mrs. Washington, who was raising her grandson, you see, her husband became so distraught over his daughter's death that he never returned to work. He was a school principal and died in less than a year. Her son became distraught over the death, turned to drugs, and died within 4 years. And she was left with the grandson. It totally wrecked her family. And he said that he left prison a forgiven man.
Before she died, Mrs. Washington attended Ron's wedding.
I've been out of prison now for 8 years. Haven't been in any kind of trouble. Got out, got married, start studying, got my CDL license. Been driving trucks for the last 7 years, 8 years. And just bought a house and just basically just doing what I'm supposed to do to stay out.
You know, Matthew presents to us the parable of Jesus, from which we draw what we call the corporal acts of mercy. You know, I was in prison and you came to see me. There is our mandate for attention to people who are in prison.
The issue about the church being an epicenter of crime reduction, about justice, it's prophetic, it is in the scripture, it is right, and we've got to start taking a center stage, take the center stage around these issues. I don't think we can kind of play around the fringes. The issues around crime and community safety, the sense of peace for any local community has to lie with the church taking responsibility.
I've seen so many people changed by God reaching out to them. I think prison is a place where if you take down the sort of macho defenses of pride and arrogance, that actually people in their heart of hearts know they've screwed up. And if they're brave enough to admit it and to share their pain with God and then to turn to Him, God, as He does in the parable of the prodigal son, comes rushing out to meet them. And He does the changing. You just have to ask Him in and ask Him to change you, and that's what certainly happened to me, and I've seen it happen to some really quite bad people who've become very good people.